program because it's quicker and we can adapt. We're treating now, the majority of people I treat are amphetamine users.
Right.
And we're actually getting better outcomes treating them than we did with alcoholics and heroin addicts. And I've been asking Nick if Turning Point can come out and do an evaluation for me of my program.
Right, so more widely, we don't really know how to treat this problem?
We know how to treat it. It's just a matter of getting the institutions and the service structures to change.
Can I give you an example? By the time, if somebody's been using amphetamines, particularly crystal meth, for a period of time heavily, and they get to the point of having this psychosis, this real serious mental health condition where they're out of control, and they get admitted to a psychiatric institution, the treatment for psychosis is the same in the acute phase, doesn't matter what the cause is. You settle down and you're treated symptomatically and you get back under control. After 2 or 3 days, they get to the point where you can actually figure out what's going on. Is it an organic psychosis, you know, a brain disease, or is it caused by the drugs? And at that point, they make a distinction. They can make a diagnosis. If it's an organic psychosis, then they tend to go into the normal mental health treatment stream. If it's a drug-caused one, they go out the door. They don't go out the door to a drug and alcohol treatment service generally. They just go out the door. This is not the mental health system's responsibility as it is seen. A lot of it is to do with funding. A lot of it is to do with, as Richard says, is the responsiveness to the changing scene. And we don't have an alcohol and drug publicly funded system that is adequately funded or adequately resourced to be able to be that responsive to changing drug trends.
And as you've indicated to us before too, ice is a relatively new problem. It's only in the last 5 or 6 or 7 years that we've really seen it.
Is that a new problem when it's 5 years? That is not a new problem.
Really?
You know, like, come on, a new problem to me would be something that's happened last month.
Okay.
Not 5 years ago. The government hasn't responded. I have, you know, the way we should treat amphetamine users, and we've seen it at the ATS Forum conference in Sydney, is we need longer-term residential treatment. So when they go through that delirium stage and they're settled down, they should go straight into a residential treatment facility where they can have a little bit of time out and settle down. A lot of your viewers are going to say, we've had kids go crazy in our house, you know, assault. I've got a, you know, I could just give you some, I don't want to be over dramatic like the Herald Sun was this morning, but you know, it's a real problem and people can't get into services. When you go out the door in hospital, you ring up Turning Point or Direct Line to find out where can I go to a detox. It's a minimum of a 2-week wait before you even get into a detox. So in that 2 weeks, we're back on the ice, we're back robbing people. I've got a young kid in my program and he's watching today, all of the rehab where I'm from are watching this show. You know, he went into 2 service stations with a tyre lever. And he's a big kid. But that's what he is, a big kid.
And you sort of indicated that before too, when you were saying that heroin users die. Ice users continue to use for a longer period of time.
I don't think they use for a longer period of time. Heroin users have longevity. These guys go crazy sooner. So I'm getting a lot of my clients are younger.
Yeah.
So that's why it's really standing out, I think, to families, is because it's happening while they're still in the family. And, you know, old heroin users just drift off and fade away. And Nick and I have dealt with a lot of heroin users in our years. You know, we've worked together on a few projects. And this
the big difference is that it's with heroin, it's not so much the drug that's causing the problem, it's the lifestyle and the addiction to an illegal drug that they have to raise the money for and get involved in crime. This is a drug that is directly dangerous. But can I come back to, is this a new phenomenon? Amphetamines have been around for a very long time. They've been around in Australia
has
since...
ice been around for a long time, or am I really vague?
What's the big difference with ice? Ice is a much purer presentation. It's the same chemical, but it's a much purer presentation.
So less does more.
And yes, it has been increasing as a proportion of the use of amphetamines. And what I mean by it's not an epidemic is that it's not something which is increasing rapidly in the numbers of people using. It's not an infectious disease. It's not spreading to lots of other people at a rapid rate. The figures are very stable about the numbers of people using. Within that, more people are using ice. More people have been using it longer and are now starting to suffer the long-term effects.
Yeah, it's actually supply.
Can I make another point
You can
about
make
that?
it in your boot of your car.
That's the thing.
Get on the internet.
We've got to get used to this because we've had a history of illicit drugs in Australia that have been imported from overseas. Heroin, cocaine, they've got to be grown in certain parts of the world. And then they have to go through long supply chains to get to Australia. This is different. Even though amphetamine supply in Australia started overseas, and there's a flood of amphetamines going on across Asia at the moment. I mean, an absolute flood. The place is saturated with them. because Burma changed from production of opiates.
Nick?
Absolutely. In Asia, it is of epidemic proportions, and it's disastrous. But increasingly, those drugs are manufactured here in Australia, and we have fewer opportunities to cut the supply chain. So we've got to get used to this, and one of the ways we have to get used to it is by building better and more responsive treatment systems.
Just quickly, we've run out of time, but just quickly, I want to ask, the Australian National Council of Drugs report recommends that we educate, but they always talk about when we educate, not to use fear campaigns. Why don't we use fear campaigns? What's wrong with a fear campaign?
They don't work.
The Grim Reaper is a good example of HIV, and that's an area that Nick and I work together.
The evidence...
Everyone that worried well go looking for
the evidence is that they work for people who need them least.
That's right.
And the people who are at risk of these drugs aren't affected by them or are adversely, in fact, even encouraged to use the drugs by fear campaigns.
The education, I think, for those worried well would be to help your friend that's got a problem, intervene, stick your nose in, make it your business, get them into treatment.
We leave with the message that there are treatment services and there are effective treatments.
All right, and if anyone is having problems, of course, we should point out we'll have all of those details on our website, and there's the number for Turning Point. Gentlemen, we're out of time. We'd love to have you back at some stage.
We would.
But thanks again for coming.
Thanks for your time. You're with 9am live right across the country. Thanks for watching. We'll be back with more after this.